Hello, and welcome back to Therapist Plays Disco Elysium. On today's episode, we're going to see if Harry has any other skills than being a detective. Specifically, if he knows how to sing. So we're finally getting to do the karaoke scene, and maybe somewhat surprisingly, maybe somewhat not, I actually have like a lot to say about this scene in particular, and I'll be giving you a very deep breakdown into how I think it demonstrates something we all face, which is when we are trying to do something that we're not super confident in, and also on a broader psychological level, what this tells us about Harry's whole life. And we're also going to learn something very effective that I've used in therapy lots of times for how to overcome situations where you don't feel super qualified to do something or you're stressing about something. There's actually quite a simple way to raise your effectiveness at thinking through your problems that I'll share with you today. So all that is coming in this long breakdown of a very short scene, but I hope you enjoy. Okay. Welcome back, and thank you for being so patient as we've taken a little break here. And now it's back to the case, the real case. As in, when can we sing karaoke for the people of Revachol? Let's see if we can do that now. Or maybe we still have to wait a little bit. I think someone said... Oh no, here we go. This is it. Is this the audience? There's like maybe 2 extra people. Let's see.
The stage is all set up for your performance. Feels silent. You can hear the pellets creak under your feet.
I have waited for this moment for so long.
You feel a little dizzy, a little unsteady suddenly.
Yes. With nervous anticipation.
So, are you ready for your thing now? Let me know when I should turn on the karaoke carousel.
Okay, let's check the room one more time.
The bar is full and buzzing with chatter. No one is paying you any attention.
They will
but
soon.
Still you feel your knees turn to noodles. Okay, now a couple is looking at you. Even worse.
Okay, we're gonna talk about this. And something really interesting about how to understand the psychological relevance of like anxiety and competency in situations like this. Something I actually use in therapy sometimes, but I will first let this play out so that I have good material to discuss.
You're sweating.
Yes. Yes.
They are going to hate you.
No, they aren't.
Just make sure you move, okay? Don't be stiff.
What I love, again, is all of our different skills. They are in competition for their mental state, their understanding of who we are as a person. Because you go through this, like, let's say you're getting on stage, and yeah, you'll often have these conflicting thoughts. One's like, oh my god, you're gonna bomb, and another one's like, no way, it's gonna be fine. It's like, which one do you trust? We'll talk about that as well, because it is really interesting. I need to like very comprehensively talk about all the amazing things that this game's skill system represents in terms of mental health, because it is probably the best RPG system ever for representing the actual thought process that we go through in stressful and, well, even regular situations. Like whenever we have conversations with people, it just perfectly captures so much of the stuff that usually I'm dealing with in therapy, where I'm like, okay, there's this part of you that's like, fuck this. And there's a part of you that's like, wait, this could be good. Okay. Let's get Kim involved. Maybe Kim will ease our nerves with a bit of encouragement. He's be my #1 fan. Look, Kim, I'm gonna sing.
I can see that.
He's ready. Look, if I have Kim's confidence, then I can do this. Let's give it a test.
Immediately, a loud feedback noise startles the room. You feel like an amateur. How are you supposed to hold the mic? Should you just sing into it? Where should you stand?
I'm a pacer, so whenever I give a presentation or something, I'm going to take that mic and I'm going to walk around with it.
Hands. Where do you put your hands? Does someone feel like throwing up? I do. A little.
Oh no. It actually went down. God damn it. All right. Fuck it. Let's go. 3%. I'm ready. Gart, hit play.
The air is thick with anticipation.
Yep, I knew it.
Someone dims the lights as the music starts. A lump's in your throat suddenly.
Is he actually gonna sing? I don't think we've heard Harry's voice.
I would often go there to the tiny church there, the smallest church in Sanson. Though it once was larger. How the real may rest there.
Yeah, it's getting better. It's getting better every time.
Down through the mist there. Towards the Seven Sisters. Towards those pale cliffs there. I would often stay there in the tiny yard there. I have been so glad here.
That was pretty good.
Looking forward to the past here.
This is getting a little better.
But now you're all alone. None of this matters. At all.
Okay. How did we do? Oh, the lyrics. I was just thinking the voice sounded like a limbic system. I would often go there to the tiny church there, the smallest church in St. Psalms. Though it once was larger. Now the real may rest there down through the mist there. To the Seven Sisters, towards those pale cliffs there. I would often stay there in the tiny yard there. I've been so glad here, looking forward to the past year. But now you are all alone. None of this matters at all. Oh, one thing I can say is I did find myself moving from cringe at myself to like sadness for myself. Like I was like, oh, I'm less embarrassed by what I'm hearing and more empathetic towards it because you can hear the pain that's coming through it.
Do you hear that? It's the most pathetic applause in the world, Harry. Made of pity. No one liked you.
Is that Kim? Is that Kim clapping? Fuck you, I gave it my fucking best. No, I think we're self-aware enough at this point to know we sound bad. This was not about them. This is not about impressing them. This is about me. But you didn't like it.
Your words echo in the karaoke mic. People talk in the distance. A couple tries not to look at you.
Quit yelling into the mic.
Okay, I guess we have to go into one of these. Let's appeal to the emotional side. This is, look, I know it's not good, but I'm singing my fucking heart out. It's not good enough for you fuckers.
You hear or think you hear uncomfortable shifting around. A bit of laughter, maybe. No one's saying anything.
I'm gonna unplug the mic now, okay?
You don't know what good singing is. This is real singing. I sang about real stuff.
That's it. I'm unplugging it.
You press the stop on the tape carousel. You hear a little whine of feedback, and then the mic dies in your hand.
That's it. You're unpowered.
Let's go, officer. These people wouldn't know a good performance if it beat them in the ass.
Thank you, Kim. You liked it?
Detective Dubois, it was downright tragic. Now, let's go.
Kim is a fucking real
I
one.
mean it, he thinks.
I think Kim is where I was at, where like at first I was just viscerally responding to the quality of the sound in my ears. But then when I stopped paying attention to that, I was like, ooh, there's really tender feelings stuff here. Okay. Let's get some reactions. And then I'll talk about that whole scene.
I can't believe this shit.
Yeah, fuck you. Unless you have something to praise me for. I bet you liked that, didn't you? Let's be honest, that was some first-rate karaoke.
Okay. Yes, that was pretty good.
What? No. No. There are universal standards of good out there, and that was just complete shit.
Jean, he's not right. Treat him like you treat McCoy's little brother.
Aw, you're just playing nice. Hey, maybe it didn't go as well as I thought. Maybe we are a little delusional.
You think so?
It was very nice. Different, but good kind of different. I liked it.
Emotional. It was emotional. That's what you're looking for. Gart, what did you think?
Wow. Just wow. I hope you really enjoyed yourself up there. Had a cathartic experience.
I did.
Because for the rest of us, that really sucked.
You know what, Gart? You just keep doing whatever you're doing with that bird, okay?
It's safe to say this is about your karaoke performance.
You don't understand my performance. Those high notes, I purposefully shredded them to convey a strained, worn-out sadness, yes.
I get it. You were purposefully shit. So original. I'm not letting anyone up there again. Ever. Now, what did you want?
Oh, okay. So, the performance was so good that it would be the last one ever. I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. What did Man on the Balcony think?
Hi again, Gendarme.
No comment? No comment at all? It's a little strange.
Bye-bye, Gendarme.
Maybe I'll have to ask him when Kim is not around. What about the money guy? What did he think? Yeah, okay. I know, he's really just got one thing on his mind. Okay. What about the Hardy Boys? I gotta have at least one of the Hardy Boys.
Tornado is back.
One of them's gotta be on my side.
Want?
Okay. I guess, we already got their reactions in the performance. Okay, that's enough of that. I don't know. Does this guy have anything to say about my performance?
The man ponders his...
No. Okay. I once again need a reference, a visual reference to talk about what we just witnessed. Okay. So, forgive me if you've seen this one before. Sometimes I forget if I've brought a concept into this series yet, or if we talked about it in the anime days. Hold on, let me... YouTube's not going to appreciate that I let music of any kind play during this game for some reason. Okay. So, This is a chart representing the concept of the flow state. So maybe you've heard this term before, flow state. It was basically coined by a Hungarian-American psychologist named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And flow kind of describes... Okay, I'm just gonna pull it down because otherwise YouTube doesn't like it. I'll turn it back on in a second. So a flow basically describes a very specific point where the level of difficulty of what we're doing is equal to our skill in doing that thing, and that at a certain high intensity. So flow state, we hear it talked about in sports, in creativity, whatever, right? When you're in a flow state, you'll know it because it's like time seems to go very quickly, or you sort of blink and some time has passed. You're not very self-conscious. You're not thinking about what you're doing. Like, your awareness and your actions are sort of like one continuum, rather than like being self-conscious and thinking, oh, I have to do this, then this, then this. Like, you're not in your head. So flow state is talked about in psychology as like a condition for performance, obviously. For example, like, let's have some people go into a flow state and then take a test, and have people who are not in a flow state take that same test. The people in flow tend to do better, right? So it was research in that context. We were not in a flow state just then. Certainly not based on people's reactions and even our own sense of confusion. But I wanted to bring this in because the concept of flow is not by itself interesting. It's interesting because of all of the things that are not a flow state. So we can see here on this graph, we have when something takes a certain amount of skill and has a certain amount of challenge, right? At the low level, when something is not difficult and you're not very equipped to do it, we tend to be quite apathetic. We don't care. Think about when you were in school and you didn't understand what was going on, and you also found that like the challenge was not intellectually stimulating. Like, we're going to just repeat times tables or something, and you weren't paying attention before, so you don't have the skill either. Like, we become apathetic. We can use this to understand people's level of engagement with things, but also as a mental health resource, which I'll tell you about in a second. So there are all these different things, right? The one I want to bring in is, consider where Harry was standing at the front of the Whirling in Rags. Well, the challenge was very high and our skill was very low. So this is where we tend to experience a lot of anxiety. We're highly alert, highly perceptive, because we feel threatened, right? We're almost in a fight or flight response, which is why those interjections from the skills were like, let's check the room. Maybe there should be more people here. Like, maybe that, you know, having a bigger audience will be less focus on me. Like, you can see that just by waiting to do it in front of a lot of people, what we were trying to do is bring in some control. We were trying to bring the skill level in, if not the skill level, but bring the challenge level down. Like, oh, if there's more people, maybe this won't be so hard. Something like that, right? So you'll see people compensate. Like, when something is very difficult, your two things you can do is either gain skill, get good, or try to reduce the challenge as much as possible. We did not succeed. We actually made it harder for ourselves, because when we checked the mic, we confirmed the anxious thinking that, oh yeah, this is going to be bad, and we don't really know what we're doing, right? So it actually, it sort of cleared this upper boundary in terms of how stressed it made us. So you can kind of see, like, think about things you have to do. Okay, you're going to talk to your boss. there's something wrong. Maybe you did something wrong. Why do we start to feel anxiety? Well, the challenge could be very high. We start to assess like, okay, this is going to be a difficult conversation. I don't know what I did. Or we start anticipating the level of challenge. If I get in trouble, maybe I get fired and then I have to find a new job and I don't feel very ready for that. Like, this perspective on flow tends to consider anxiety as a response to this imbalance between skill and challenge, right? When we're relaxed, on the other hand, it's because we have a lot of skill to do something and the challenge is very low. Think about like going on a walk. Why is going for a walk such a great little exercise for mental health? Well, because it puts you in a relaxed state of mind. This is about mind states, okay? How effective are you going to be in a certain mind state, right? That's why flow is a desired mind state, a mental state to be in, because you are at your peak proficiency and all of your attention is given to this thing. When you don't need to give a lot of attention to it, we're not as exerted, we're not as hyper vigilant. So our performance, like, we're not, relaxation isn't about performing well. You're not having to like, I'm going to have the best fucking walk ever. Like, that's not the mindset you're in, right? You're not seeking performance, you're seeking relaxation. Flow is what we want for creative work. You get into a flow state. You're just typing away, or you're making music, and whatever it is you're doing. Your self-consciousness disappears because your skills directly meet the level of challenge. Or in sports, right? This is a highly performance state of mind to be in. Less so when the game is not going well and we feel like we don't have enough time or skill to win it back. We start to get worried. Or when we do something too often and it's repetitive and we get bored because we are outpacing the problem. And there's nothing challenging. And so I will use this in my work when someone is talking about, like, well, let's say they're struggling with something. Okay, now we're up here at this end. But also, like, I'm losing motivation for something. I'm losing motivation for my job. My relationship has stagnated. Whatever it is we're talking about, right? I might ask them, okay, well, where are we on here and how do we end up there? So we can see that Harry was definitely in an anxious state of mind. Here's the real technique, though, that I would say is helpful for people to know. You can pair things that make you anxious with activities that put you in a more controlled state of mind. So, for example, let's say you have a lot of stuff going on and you're very worried about that stuff. And the worst time that you can sit there and be worried about it is when you're just sitting on your couch doing nothing, or you're waiting for the dentist, or you're at a dinner table waiting for your food. Like, your mind is going to start wandering to the anxious thoughts. You're going to start being stressed and distracted. And your ability to be alert with what you're doing is going to be taken over by the alertness to the problem, right? We don't want to pair anxiety with a relaxing activity because there's not enough attention grabbing you when you're relaxing. Like, if you're just sitting on your couch, there's not enough challenge to divert your attention to that. And so if you start thinking about stuff that stresses you out, well, you're going to get stressed. Consider, though, if you went and hit the treadmill for a while. Okay, treadmill is going to take a lot of energy, some attention, but it's also kind of automated. You're not having to think a lot about what you're doing once you get a rhythm going. You're going to end up in this control state of mind here, right? Where the challenge is in how much you're keeping pace with what you're doing and making sure you don't fall, basically. But it's not so much that you have to pay attention to every stride that you're making. You're going to be in a control state, not a flow state, because this you're so dedicated to what you're doing, you're not thinking about other things. You actually want to be in a control state. So if you can wait and be like, okay, I have this thing I'm worried about. I'm going to wait to unpack those worries when I am in a control state, when I'm on the treadmill. What you will find is that your problem solving and your confidence and your ability to assess your own skills is much better than if you were pairing your anxious thoughts in one of these other states, right? Especially an anxious state. When Harry got up there and was about to give his performance, you could see that after we checked if the mic was working, our percentage went from an 8 to a 3. Like, it actually went down because we started to understand, oh, we are actually not qualified to do this. Like, we became alerted to how deficient we are and how bad this is going to be, right? Like, we were already in a non-control state, and then we were thinking about the fact that we're not in control. Anxiety goes up, performance goes down. If you're in a control state and you start thinking about, am I capable of doing this? You might start perceiving yourself as more competent. So worry about your problems when you're in a control state. Now, this could be anything. I mean, look, I like the treadmill. I like to run. It's that perfect medium for me between it is challenging, but it doesn't take all of my attention. I can let my mind wander a little bit. And when I come out of that control state, I feel better about the problem usually because I've thought through it. But it could be something simple as well, like washing the dishes. Okay, it is something you have to pay attention to. It's on the lower end of challenge, let's say, but you are in a control state of mind. You're manipulating what you're doing. There's very little chance that you're going to mess what you're doing up, right? Or out on a walk, or anything that makes you feel like you have to give a little bit of attention to what you're doing so you can succeed at it, but not enough that if you let that attention slip, something would happen. For example, not in the car. I would not call like driving on your way to work or home from work, this kind of control state. Why? Well, because if you start thinking about the stuff that makes you anxious and that attention starts going too much towards your anxiety, and now you may slip into an anxious state while you're in a moving vehicle that could potentially put you or others at risk. So you probably need more of your attention going to, like, you shouldn't be absent-minded in the car. I know we all kind of are. We're probably flowing somewhere between relaxed and controlled, usually when we're in the car. But any amount of anxiety you welcome into that is going to pull you somewhat closer to that centerpiece, right? And I don't think you should be there in a car. But like, go ride a bike, go ride your bicycle into the wilderness, nature, somewhere, if you live by it, you know. Go for a walk around your neighborhood. Start doing your laundry. Any of these things, right? That we kind of do absent-mindedly because they're so menial and simple. They don't take a lot of attention from us. In fact, they may even be kind of boring. Well, if you start adding challenge, as in pair some of the challenge of your life to that thing, guess what? You're going to come out of boredom and you're going to be like somewhere here. Right? So that's my technique for you. Don't like think about your problems when you are waiting for things, when you're supposed to be doing something else. Pair them with a control state of mind. Now, for those of you who don't like to run, regular exercise like weightlifting and stuff might be somewhere here, although maybe you're like closer to this, because usually in exercise you're pushing beyond your limit slightly. So you actually have to give a lot of attention to it so you don't injure yourself, right? I would not be like absentmindedly thinking about your problems while you have like, you know, fucking weights above your head. Just wouldn't do it. But certain exercises, for sure, you know. Like maybe yoga or something. I don't know. Experiment. Experiment with what your control state is and what that feels like. Now, the other thing I will often hear when I recommend this to people is like, okay, well, that's great. That's a great idea in theory, but how do I wait until I am in a control state to think about my problems? Like, I find myself thinking about them all the time. Well, then we get into like mindfulness training, right? And mindfulness is a term that applies to lots and lots of things, and it's kind of hard to capture exactly what it means to certain people, but the way I think of mindfulness, it is your authority over the present moment. At any point when you are lost in thought or you're distracted or whatever, like you're not present. You're not grounded in what you're experiencing with your five senses. Mindfulness, training yourself to be mindful, is like, if you can make yourself present right now, then you are in control of your thinking. Even if it's very brief, even if as soon as you're, okay, here I am, this is what I'm doing. Oh my God, that problem is still there and I keep thinking about it. You have final authority over whether you are present, always, right? And if you don't, it's probably because you are inebriated or so high on the stress scale that you're dissociating, right? But generally, for, you know, the kinds of problems that I'm talking about, where you can get yourself to a point where you can at least delay your attention to them, for those kinds of problems, yeah, mindfulness is great for this. Exercise your authority over making yourself present, and you can get to a point where it's like, okay, I have those problems, they are on my mind, I'm going to deal with them, but you know what? I'm not worrying about them isn't the same as problem solving. It's just worrying about them. It's just keeping them present and stressing about them. If you want to problem solve them, pair that exercise of thinking about them when you are in some sort of control state of mind. For example, what is a control state for Harry? Well, it's probably when we're deep into a very challenging conversation with someone, where our skills are firing on all cylinders and we pass a crazy check, and we get that nice little like green flash of dopamine that says like you succeeded at this, and the skill chimes in and reveals something. Like, Harry's in a control state when he's doing detective work, because that's what he's like fucking built to do, right? That's when we're most confident, and we've seen that. We've literally seen that in all of these interactions. In some cases, we were not fully in a control state. Like, let's say in conversations with Kuno, the challenge was too high. How can we communicate with this kid? Like, we don't have anything he wants. He's too powerful. So we pulled away from the control state more into one of these over here, right? You could say that for me, whenever the subject of politics comes up, because it can be so stressful to engage with for me, and I feel I don't have the skill to navigate those discussions always, rather than improve my skill, which I feel like I have been doing over the course of this series, I tried to pull the challenge away by basically like discounting its relevance. This whole series is just an analysis of my own problems and the techniques that I use to help other people with problems that are universal. But I hope you appreciate the little bit of self-therapy that I go through to explain this stuff, because I mean, my own life is the easiest example. Yes, I don't typically increase my skill in that department. Let's say it's intellectually challenging or whatever. So we can do things to intellectually dismiss the level of challenge and say, well, I'm not going to participate in that. It's not relevant to me. I don't have the skill to talk about it, so I'm not going to engage in the challenge. And where do I end up? I become apathetic. Like, I don't care. For those of you who are very confident in your understanding of politics or whatever else, you're like high up here on this range, and you're like, yeah, it's challenging, but I'm highly skilled and adept at discussing it, so my thoughts flow freely, you know. In fact, it's arousing. It's hard to connect with people sometimes when you're like, well, I'm in an aroused state of mind and you're in an apathetic state of mind about this thing. Then we clash, right? Me? The closest I ever am to a flow state is when I'm in therapy. Because it is so demanding of your attention. I can't be thinking about my own life, and I certainly can't be thinking about my own problems while I'm in therapy with someone else. It's not a control state. There is no bandwidth excess left over to, like, think about my own shit in the middle of that. Like, all of my attention has to be on this person. On my attending behaviors, my eye contact, my speech, my tone of voice, my vocabulary, my professionalism. That's all background stuff. What are they saying? What emotion are they feeling? What are they saying that they're maybe not quite saying as well? What are they saying and what are they meaning? How is what we're talking about today relevant to the session we had 3 months ago? Their entire life story is in my mind that I'm referencing and cross-referencing with all of these therapeutic techniques and perspectives. And I'm also preparing my response to that person and how I'm going to deliver that idea. And okay, there's just like a lot of stuff that you're thinking about, and I just don't have any space left in my brain to really have the thoughts of how is this going. Every once in a while that seeps in. And you know, like no one's in a flow state constantly. I'm probably kind of all over this range of things, right? In any given therapy session. Not every therapy session is like a super demanding thing either. Just for reference. Sometimes it's quite relaxing. But yeah, that's like my experience with the flow state. It's very rewarding. It's very motivating as far as like it's a good feeling, you know. That's why I like to do it. And I think that when I think about people who don't like their jobs, like, let's say, Fritta Girl. Do you think she's in a flow state right now? Do you think she's in a flow state ever in her life in this environment? Okay. I'll tell you what. Spending all of your time in these 3 categories is how you become fucking depressed with life. You're either apathetic because nothing challenges you, okay? It's not really that challenging to be in this environment all day and doing nothing. And it doesn't take very much skill either. Just listen to her.
Is this about the questions again? Because I don't really know anything.
I don't know anything. I don't have the skill to answer this question, and I also don't really care. She's apathetic. That's not her personality. It's not, oh, she's an apathetic person. She doesn't care. Her environment is not providing her motivation to move around this chart. When things get hard, let's say, you know, when she starts thinking about the rest of her life and her future and, does that, you know, anything in this matter, maybe she starts to get worried and stressed and anxious. But most of the time she's probably bored because what she's doing is easy. She has a little bit of skill in selling things and talking to people, but it's not really challenging. Like, this is, you know, conducive to how people become quite uninterested in their work. Because we like when work is meaningful and challenging, but not too challenging. When things get too challenging, we get burnt out and we get overloaded, right? So, all of this is to say, think about Harry's life, okay? In his work as a detective is probably the closest he gets to this top right corner of this chart. This is why it is the best distraction from his other problems, from his relationship issues, which are highly challenging and he's very unskilled to deal with. From his professionalism, like maintaining a professional lifestyle. Probably more apathetic. He just doesn't really see the need to improve that skill. It's not making him a better detective, and he has not correlated that with being a better person, probably until recently, since we've started shaping him, right? You could even take this perspective to say that, okay, a part of the reason why people fall into addiction is because without any sort of stimulation, we mostly are in this bottom, you know, left, the left side of this chart. And the world is not naturally giving us enough stimulating arousal things, and we're already depressed, so it's hard to see the motivation to increase our skill. So what do? We stimulate. We can artificially create the arousal condition. In fact, while I was teaching this subject once, as I was describing the conditions for flow, which I will bring up now. Okay, so I was describing the conditions for flow. The components and the conditions. So intense and focused concentration on the present moment. Merging of action and awareness, I talked about that. A loss of reflective self-consciousness, so you're not thinking about what you're doing, really. You're just doing it. A sense of personal control or agency over the situation. A distorted temporal experience, so time kind of disappearing. Experience of the activity is intrinsically rewarding. Okay. I was talking about this stuff, and there's another piece on this as well. Yeah, we'll talk about the conditions, but I was describing this, and one of my clients, students in the class, because I teach class in the clinic that I work in as well as do therapy there, and he had said, like, this sounds like being on meth. And I was kind of like, okay, I can see that. I can see how, like, artificially the high level of stimulation from a substance like that, which is basically concentrating all of the dopamine reserves in your brain together at once, creates intense concentration. You're not really thinking about much else. You're not thinking about, you know, yourself that much. Makes you feel like you're super in control. Time flies by, and maybe there are times where you feel like, yeah, this is super, you know, what I'm doing is super rewarding, right? Because the chemical convinces you of that. Very good insight to point that out. Substances can artificially create these conditions and make us feel like, well, I'm not a very capable person by myself, but what if I was on fucking speed all the time? Well, I'd be, like, constantly in a flow state. Or at least not be in a stressed state. Any sort of stimulants are going to put you in this upper category. Any sort of depressants, alcohol, heroin, opiates, they're going to put you, you know, maybe more down here, right? They're going to de-stimulate. Well, the point that I brought up to say that, well, yes, there is a relatability between, let's say, smoking meth and being in a flow state. One of the things that's essential for flow, these aspects can appear independently of each other, but only in combination do they constitute the flow experience. Three other components: immediate feedback. So typically, like, yeah, if you're in a flow state in a sport, the immediate feedback you're getting is like, oh, I scored a goal, whatever. Feeling the potential to succeed. And this one right here, feeling so engrossed in the experience that your other needs become negligible. That's the one that I was like really pointing out to say this is why addiction is different and why it's artificial flow, let's say, is because your other needs do not become negligible. Because this is not a natural state of flow, there is a constant need to continue getting more of the substance. Your other needs do become negligible, but there is this one overriding need to keep the stimulation going. But I thought that was a really good comment from them. Now, here's another version of that. There is also another take on flow that says the conditions to get into a flow state, and this is what we'll bring it back to Harry's experience with karaoke, is knowing what to do so you're not confused about what needs to be done. I think if you don't know what to do, you're more in the anxious or worried category. Knowing how to do it. So what is the specific process to do? Knowing how well one is doing. That comes back to getting feedback, immediate feedback. Knowing where to go if navigation is involved. High perceived challenges, high perceived skills, freedom from distractions. Okay, think about Harry's experience singing karaoke. He kind of knows what to do. He knows he has to sing. He knows he just has to, like, fucking pour his heart out, man. Like, that's what I have to do. He just kind of hyped himself up for it. Knowing how to do it. Okay, less so. Less of this, right? Not necessarily knowing how to articulate his feelings in somber, clear vocals. Knowing how well one is doing. There was an immediate concern with how did this go, not only in the game's dialogue choices, but in our reaction of like, how did we do? Let's go ask people, right? Knowing how well you're doing is important. When I think of like my therapy sessions, yeah, you know, part of what really makes me feel like I'm in a flow state sometimes is like, I know what to, it's moments where I know what to do. I know exactly where we should go with this. I know how to get there. I know how well I'm doing because the client is like also there with me. They're feeling it, you know. Knowing where to go. High perceived challenge, yes, for sure. I perceive it as super difficult to help people explore their lives. High perceived skills, sometimes I'm like, I really don't know how to solve or help work on this case. Not solve a case. I spend too much time as a detective, as a fake detective. I don't solve cases or crimes as a therapist, but we explore issues. And sometimes I have high perceived skills, but sometimes there's people who I'm like, wow, this really needs an approach that I'm not super skilled in. And then I'm more self-conscious. I'm much more likely to be thinking about what I'm doing and not being in a very flow-like state in those kinds of therapy sessions. And freedom from distractions. So, yeah, definitely lots of distractions in the whirling in rags. And then there's all kinds of stuff about maintaining flow. Like, it's a super cool concept. And if you can relate, you know, if you can relate it back to like, okay, there are probably things in your life that you are bored with or are too stressful. Consider what, you know, what balancing that out might look like. If it's too stressful, you either need to get good at what it is, okay, or find ways to diffuse the level of challenge. And if you're too good at something, you probably need to increase the level of challenge, right? I don't recommend reducing your skill, but increase the challenge. By adding intrinsic reward. And keep in mind what I said, especially if you have stuff to worry about, pair that worrying with something where you're in a control state and learn to practice mindfulness so that you can do that. Like, you can feel confident that, look, I'm going to put this issue out of mind until I'm in a state of mind where it is deserving of my attention to actually worry about it. For me, that's running, or walking, or any of these little things. It's always nice. So I think that's all I have to really say about the karaoke scene. Not just a fun little aside in our playthrough here, but I actually think kind of a microcosm of like Harry's life and a very perfect demonstration of why we have struggled with so many things. And why we see so much anxiety coming from him in basically every other area than his job, which is kind of the only surviving thing from who we were before. It's the only thing we've really kept around. We've been very willing to kind of ditch everything else. Like, let's ditch the misogynism. Let's ditch the toxic relationship values. Let's try to be a better person and leader and guide and all of these things. Like, we've been very willing to mold everything about ourselves into something new because we kind of found it poor before. But the one thing that we've been like willing to keep and to keep refining is our skill set as a detective, because it is the thing we gravitate naturally to in terms of skill. Okay. That's going to be our episode. I've spent 52 minutes now. This playthrough is going to last forever. But look, I think this interaction was deserving of some commentary, because I really see it as every little thing they put in this game is so holistic, like to the storytelling and to the character. Nothing is just sort of incidental or just purely for fun. Maybe there's one or two things that are just purely for fun, but it's part of the storytelling. It's part of our character development. So yeah, that's a bit of a discussion on flow and how we're not very often in it. Okay, what do we have to do next? No. Okay, we still have some time before we can go do the gun thing. We could go back to the church. There's a couple things we can do. Okay. We're gonna bumble around for a bit. I do know that people gave me a bunch of suggestions on the last episode, so I'll go and review comments from that. And then we'll go and get our gun. Continue this case. So I will see you for that very soon.